The harsh fluorescent lights of the prison visiting room cast an unflattering glow on Sofia Martinez's face as she waited nervously, her leg bouncing with pent-up energy. At 24, she was strikingly beautiful, with long dark hair and expressive brown eyes that betrayed every emotion. Today, those eyes were filled with a mixture of anticipation and fear, as she prepared to meet the man who had become the unexpected center of her world. The buzzer sounded, and her breath caught in her throat as she saw him enter. Marcus Blackwood, 48, carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had accepted his fate but refused to be broken by it. His salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, his prison uniform impeccably clean. As their eyes met across the room, Sofia felt the familiar flutter in her chest, a sensation that both thrilled and terrified her. "Sofia," Marcus said softly as he sat down across from her, his deep voice sending shivers down her spine. "I wasn't sure you'd come." She reached out instinctively to take his hand, only to be stopped by the stern look from a nearby guard. "Right. No physical contact." "Of course I came," she replied, forcing a smile. "I told you I'm not giving up on you. On us." The story of how Sofia Martinez, a bright-eyed journalism student, and Marcus Blackwood, a convicted murderer serving a life sentence, had fallen in love was one that defied all logic and reason. It had begun 6 months earlier when Sofia, interning at a local newspaper, had been assigned to cover a series of workshops aimed at rehabilitating long-term inmates. From the moment she first saw Marcus leading a discussion on Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, Sofia had been captivated. His intelligence, his eloquence, the depth of remorse he showed for his past actions. It all combined to create an irresistible allure. She told herself it was just professional fascination, that she was simply intrigued by his story. But as the weeks passed and she found more and more excuses to visit the prison, she could no longer deny the growing attraction. For his part, Marcus had been wary at first. He'd seen plenty of young idealists come through the prison, full of grand ideas about redemption and second chances. But there was something different about Sofia, a genuine warmth and empathy that broke through the protective walls he built around his heart. Despite his best efforts to maintain distance, he found himself looking forward to her visits, treasuring every moment of intellectual discourse and emotional connection. It wasn't until a particularly intense discussion about the nature of forgiveness that things came to a head. Sofia had been arguing passionately that everyone deserved a second chance, her eyes shining with conviction. Marcus, overwhelmed by her unwavering belief in him, had reached out and taken her hand without thinking. The spark that passed between them in that moment was electric, undeniable. They both pulled back quickly, aware of the guards watching, but the damage was done. From that point on, there was no going back to the pretense of a purely professional relationship. Now, 6 months later, they sat across from each other in the visiting room, their forbidden love a heavy weight between them. Sofia longed to touch him, to feel the warmth of his skin against hers. Instead, she settled for drinking in every detail of his face, committing it to memory to sustain her until their next meeting. "How are your classes going?" Marcus asked, genuine interest in his eyes. He had always encouraged her studies, pushing her to pursue her dreams even as their relationship complicated everything. Sofia launched into an animated description of her latest journalism project, gesturing expressively as she spoke. Marcus watched her with a mixture of pride and pain, marveling at her passion and intelligence while acutely aware of the life he could never give her. As their allotted visiting time drew to a close, the weight of their impossible situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. Sofia felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes but fought them back. She refused to waste their precious time together on sadness. "I love you," she said fiercely, leaning in as close as she dared. "No matter what anyone says, no matter how hard it gets, I'm not going anywhere." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, his expression a complex mix of love, gratitude, and anguish. "I love you too," he replied softly, "more than I ever thought possible. But Sofia, you have to promise me something." She tensed, sensing what was coming. It was an argument they'd had many times before. "Marcus, don't dash. Listen to me," he interrupted gently. "You're young, brilliant, with your whole life ahead of you. I can't bear the thought of you wasting your best years waiting for a man who may never be free. Promise me you'll stay open to other possibilities." That if you meet someone who can give you the life you deserve, you won't hold back because of me." Sophia shook her head vehemently, anger flashing in her eyes. "How can you ask me that? What we have, it's real, Marcus. It's more real than anything I've ever felt. I don't want some picket fence life with anyone else. I want you, challenges and all." Before Marcus could respond, the guard's voice cut through their intense exchange. "Time's up. Say your goodbyes." The drive home from the prison was always the hardest part for Sophia. The transition from the heightened emotions of her visits with Marcus to the mundane reality of her everyday life left her feeling hollow and disconnected. As she navigated the familiar streets of her small town, she couldn't shake the gnawing fear that Marcus was right, that their love, no matter how powerful, was ultimately doomed. She pulled into the driveway of her parents' modest home, where she still lived while finishing her degree. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself for the disapproving looks and thinly veiled comments that had become routine since her family discovered her relationship with Marcus. "Hey, sweetie," her mother called from the kitchen as Sophia entered. "How was your visit?" Sophia bit back a sigh at the hesitation in her mother's voice. "It was fine, Mom. Marcus says hello." Her father looked up from his newspaper, a frown creasing his forehead. "Sophia, we've talked about this. That man is Dash. A convicted felon, I know," Sophia interrupted, her tone sharp. "He's also kind, intelligent, and deeply remorseful for his past mistakes. Why can't you see that people can change?" Her parents exchanged a worried look, and Sophia felt a pang of guilt. She knew they were just concerned for her, that from their perspective, she was throwing her life away on an impossible relationship. But they didn't understand. They couldn't feel the connection she shared with Marcus, couldn't see the beautiful soul beneath the prisoner's uniform. Retreating to her room, Sophia sank onto her bed, emotionally exhausted. She pulled out the journal where she'd been documenting her experiences with Marcus, fingers tracing over the pages filled with his words, his ideas, the profound impact he'd had on her worldview. As she wrote about their latest visit, pouring her conflicted emotions onto the page, Sophia was struck by a sudden idea. She'd been struggling to choose a topic for her final journalism project. What if she wrote about prison reform, about the possibility of redemption for even the most serious offenders? It would be controversial, certainly, but it would also give her a platform to challenge people's preconceptions, to show the humanity behind the statistics. Energized by the idea, Sophia threw herself into research. She spent weeks interviewing former inmates, victims' rights advocates, criminal justice experts. With every interview, every piece of data she uncovered, she became more convinced that the system was fundamentally flawed, that there had to be a better way. Throughout it all, Marcus was her sounding board, offering insights from his years behind bars that added depth and nuance to her reporting. Their visits took on a new dimension as they debated policy reforms and rehabilitation strategies, their intellectual connection deepening alongside their emotional bond. But as Sophia's project gained traction, attracting attention from major publications, it also brought increased scrutiny to her relationship with Marcus. Whispers spread through the journalism department, questioning her objectivity, her motivations. She overheard classmates speculating about whether she was some kind of thrill seeker, fetishizing danger through her association with a convicted killer. The criticism stung, but Sophia refused to be deterred. She threw herself into her work with even greater determination, channeling her frustration into passionate arguments for systemic change. And through it all, Marcus remained her rock, offering unwavering support, even as he continued to grapple with his own guilt and remorse. It was during one of their heated discussions about the nature of justice and forgiveness that Sophia finally broke down. The stress of the past few months, the judgment from her peers, the strain on her family relationships, the constant battle against societal norms came crashing down all at once. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she sobbed, hating herself for her weakness but unable to stop the flood of emotions. "It's just so hard, Marcus. Loving you, fighting for you while the whole world tells me I'm crazy or naive or just plain stupid." Marcus ached to hold her, to comfort her with more than just words. But the watchful eyes of the guards kept him rooted to his chair. "Sophia, my love," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the strongest, bravest person I've ever known. But I've always said, if this becomes too much, don't." Sophia interrupted fiercely, wiping away her tears. "Don't you dare try to push me away again. I'm not giving up on us. I need you to tell me it's worth it. That what we have is real. That it's not just some prison fantasy or rebellious phase like everyone seems to think." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression pained. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, heavy with the weight of years of reflection. "What we have is the most real thing I've ever experienced," he said slowly. "In my darkest moments, when the guilt and regret threaten to overwhelm me, your love is the light that guides me back. You've given me a reason to keep striving, to believe that maybe, just maybe, I can still make something positive out of my life." He paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. "But Sophia, you have to understand, my love for you is why I struggle so much with our situation. You deserve a partner who can take you to dinner, who can hold you at night, who can build a life with you outside these prison walls. I don't know if I'll ever be able to give you that." Sophia reached out, stopping just short of touching his hand. "That's not what I need from you," she said earnestly. "What I need is your mind, your heart, your soul. Everything else, we'll figure it out as it comes." As she spoke the words, Sophia felt a sense of calm settle over her. Yes, their path was difficult, fraught with challenges that most couples could never imagine. But the depth of their connection, the way Marcus challenged her to grow and see the world in new ways, that was worth fighting for. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity as Sophia's article gained national attention, sparking heated debates about criminal justice reform. She found herself giving interviews, speaking at conferences, her passionate advocacy winning her both ardent supporters and vehement critics. Through it all, her bond with Marcus only grew stronger. Their visits became a refuge from the chaos of her increasingly public life, a space where she could be truly vulnerable and authentic. They laughed together over the absurdity of her newfound fame, and Marcus beamed with pride as he watched her blossom into a powerful voice for change. But their relationship was not without its continuing challenges. The physical separation remained a constant source of frustration, their desire for each other a bittersweet ache that could never be fully satisfied. Sophia found herself lying awake at night, imagining the feel of Marcus's arms around her, the warmth of his kiss. There were moments of doubt, too. Days when the weight of societal judgment became almost unbearable, when Sophia questioned whether she was truly strong enough to weather a lifetime of obstacles. But inevitably, all it took was one look into Marcus's eyes, one deep conversation that left her intellectually invigorated and emotionally fulfilled, to reaffirm her commitment. As Sophia's 25th birthday approached, she found herself at a crossroads. Her article had opened up new career opportunities, including a prestigious fellowship that would take her across the country for a year. It was a chance to further her research, to make real strides in the fight for criminal justice reform. But it would also mean being away from Marcus, limited to phone calls and letters instead of their precious face-to-face visits. The night before she had to give her decision, Sophia visited Marcus, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. As soon as he saw her face, he knew something was wrong. "Talk to me," he said gently, his eyes filled with concern. Sophia took a deep breath and explained the situation, laying out both the incredible opportunity and her fears about what a year apart might do to their relationship. As she spoke, she searched Marcus's face for any sign of what he was thinking, terrified that he might see this as a chance to push her away, for her own good once again. But when Marcus finally responded, his words took her completely by surprise. "You have to take it," he said firmly, a bittersweet smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "This fellowship, it's everything you've been working towards. A real chance to make a difference." Sophia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "But what about us? A year is such a long time, Marcus. What if things change?" Marcus reached out, his fingers stopping just short of touching her cheek in a gesture that had become achingly familiar. "Some things will change," he acknowledged. "But what we have, our connection, our love, that's not going to disappear just because we're apart for a while." He paused, his expression growing serious. "Sophia, from the moment I met you, all I've wanted is for you to live your life to the fullest, to become the incredible woman I know you can be. This fellowship is a step towards that. And if it leads you away from me in the long run, well, loving you means wanting what's best for you, even if that's not me." Sophia shook her head vehemently, even as she marveled at the depth of Marcus's selflessness. "It won't," she said with quiet conviction. "Lead me away from you, I mean. This love, what we have. It's not something I'm willing to let go of, no matter where life takes me." As she looked into Marcus's eyes, seeing all the love and pride and bittersweet joy reflected there, Sophia felt a sense of peace settle over her. Yes, the road ahead would be difficult. There would be lonely nights, moments of doubt, a constant battle against a world that didn't understand their love. But she knew with unshakable certainty that what she and Marcus shared was worth every struggle, every sacrifice. "So," Marcus said softly, a hint of his usual wry humor creeping into his voice, "I guess we'd better start figuring out how to navigate a long-distance relationship on top of everything else, huh?" Sophia laughed through her tears, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their love a beacon of hope in a world that too often saw only darkness and despair. As the guard called time on their visit, Sophia stood, her heart full of a complex mixture of emotions: love, gratitude, anticipation for the future, and yes, a touch of fear for the unknown path ahead. But as she took one last look at Marcus, seeing all the strength and vulnerability and deep, abiding love in his eyes, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Their love story was unconventional, fraught with obstacles that would break most couples. But as Sophia walked out of the prison that day, her head held high and her heart brimming with purpose, she knew that she and Marcus were writing a new kind of love story, one of growth, of redemption, of the transformative power of unconditional love. And no matter where her journey took her, that love would remain her guiding light, a testament to the human heart's capacity for connection, even in the most unlikely of circumstances.